Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Last First Date Radio, featuring interviews with experts in dating, relating, and mating in midlife. And now, here's your host, Sandy Weiner.
Hello, everybody. This is Sandy. I am so excited that you're here today. Welcome to Last First Date Radio. We are a show about attracting and sustaining healthy relationships after 40. Every week, I love bringing you in-depth interviews with top experts and cutting-edge authors in the field of dating and relationships. And today, I am going to be speaking with therapist and podcast host Matt Marr about how to explore sexuality in a safe way. It's a really important topic. And as a dating coach for women over 40, I see this come up a lot. People feel pressured to have sex before they're ready. They don't know how to express their own sexual needs. So this is so important. And one of my top things that I teach my clients and my audience is that you need to value yourself and know your standards before you enter any relationship and even before you date. Before you go on that first date, before you even get on that first phone call, know who you are, know what you need, know how you want people to treat you, or you will be treated in the way that they choose to treat you, which is usually not going to work out. And believe me, I've been there, I've done that, and I'm done. Got the T-shirt. So I am all about helping women value themselves more. Of course, I believe men should value themselves more too, but I focus on women. And so my whole motto is you should be a woman of value. And here's my weekly tip on how to be a woman of value. Be a lifetime learner. I believe that to be somebody who is valued and values yourself, you need to always be learning and growing no matter what it is. You want to be an interesting person, you've got to get interested in stuff, whether it's a new hobby or getting involved in groups like book clubs and growing your brain in new ways, keeping current, keeping your brain active, such an important part of life. So just a few more tips before we bring on Matt, and one is that I do have a free guide on my website, so if you have not yet gotten yours, then head over there right after the show at lastfirstdate.com and get my guide for the top 10 reasons why men suddenly pull away or disappear. It's going to give you all 10 reasons plus how you can finally attract the love you deserve. So please stop sabotaging your love life and start taking back your control by being a woman of value. And one last thing is that I do have a private Facebook group. It is called Your Last First Date, and it's you have to apply to get in. I do screen every single person. It's only for women who are over 40 who are single. So you're invited to join. It's a positive place of support. The conversation is juicy, positive, and fun. It's a place to share your struggles, your challenges, and also your triumphs. So I love this group. Again, it's called Your Last First Date in Facebook groups. So now I'm going to introduce our special guest today, Matt Marr. He has been called the gay white Oprah. I love that. After he received his master's in clinical psych from Antioch University in 2009, he has been helping people gain perspective and power in their lives. In his weekly advice podcast, The Dear Maddie Show, he dishes out advice on relationships, sex, fear, friends, job, even makeup. He's also a narrative therapist. He believes that our lives can be seen through a story metaphor with characters of fear, hope, depression, addiction, all contributing to our story, our narrative. You can find him at the Dear Maddie Show, dearmaddieshow.com. No dear. No, let me do that again, dearmaddieshow.com. So join us now as Matt discusses how to discuss sexuality in a safe way and how to rewrite your love story by letting go of the old stories that you have been telling. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Hi, Sandy. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. Exciting.
I
Good to have another podcast host and somebody who's a therapist and is really knowledgeable. And I love the whole narrative story thing, so I want to be able to have some time to talk about that too. But let's start out with sexuality and how to explore it in a safe way. So let's first talk about some of the challenges that people have in sex, and discussing sex.
Mhm. Well, first off, too, just to go off, because I was listening like a little bird and I have to say, I so agree with you, what you said at the top of your show, that I tell people all the time, men, women, youth that I work with, that happiness is not, and fulfillment is not something that you find down the road. It's something you cultivate now. And I love that you were saying that as far as like building your best self to bring to a date, to bring to a relationship. So, I'm not saying that just to agree with you. I'm saying that I think that's such a common denominator for this conversation that we're having, that if this is all about building sexuality and a sense of a strong sexual self for your own self, and using that as a foundation before you enter in any type of sexuality with any partner at all. So I just want to commend you on that.
Oh, thank you.
But yeah, it was some truth talk. I loved it.
We're all about the truth here at Last First Date Radio.
We are all about the truth talk. But
yeah,
I think with talking with women in sexuality, especially women over 40, there's something that I was thinking about what I was going to talk about here, and last week I saw, because I think she was on the Grammy Awards, I saw a thing with like Jennifer Lopez, and I live in Los Angeles, and I'm also an actor, so I'm watching all that kind of stuff. But I saw so many people posting like on my social media and stuff, women and men, talking about, again, like just how she's a quote-unquote cougar and all this type of language, that she likes to date young men. And it really, maybe because I've always tried to be a feminist, but maybe more in the wake of just kind of what's happening in our country right now, I'm more kind of tuned into that. And it really just offended me and sickened me about how, and so I thought about this and coming to your show, just how one of the things women, I think, are dealing with sexuality, especially women over 40, are dealing with a lot of the culture telling them that they don't need to be, or that it's not appropriate to be sexual at their age. I don't know if you found that. It's just something I feel like I'm really big in like, and what kind of like, maybe especially as a gay man growing up in the Oklahoma and the South, what the culture was saying around me about homosexuality, it affected me inwardly, and I began to internalize that. And that's a lot of what narrative therapy is actually looking at. Is we're talking about what are the different type of stories that are going around that you are internalizing and making your story. So if any women are listening to this and they're thinking, that anytime they think of something sexually for themselves, or if they even think about like they don't feel like they can talk about with any of their girlfriends or their partner or someone about masturbation or what they want in the bedroom, I would ask them, like, is that a story that you created on your own, or is that kind of a story that maybe were there other forces, whether your parents or your school or whatever, your TV show you watch, your religious institution, where are those stories coming from, and are they a story you wrote for yourself, or maybe somebody else wrote for you?
I love this discussion. So just thinking about, like, we all have a love blueprint that begins when we're very young, and we have blueprints for everything. Our money blueprint, the way we look at life starts from a very young age, and we're not even conscious of the stories. So I do think that we can't help but be influenced by the messages that took place in our own homes, in our religious institutions, on TV. I think, as an adult, we get to really look at those things through a magnifying glass and say, how do I choose now to see my life? But so many people are not even aware of those stories. So if you grew up in a home like I did, where my parents had a very contentious marriage with a lot of screaming and yelling, and my mother put my father down a lot. And so the message often was, men don't show up for you. Men are lazy. There were a lot of these subconscious messages that I had to undo and untangle. So, and sexuality can come in so many forms. So many people have parents, like the role models were, kind of puritanical or overtly sexual or whatever. So how are some ways people can unpack their stories from childhood, from their past?
Well, I think one way is, again, not everything is going back in your childhood, but a lot of what you were saying, I totally is right on. Especially, we are sexual beings as babies. I mean, babies are even, and it's a different type of sexuality, but as far as like our bodies and feeling and touch and what feels good and what doesn't, even as young children. So, and what the message, I love that word blueprint you use, because we get this blueprint very early. So, and, a lot of times, too, people think, oh, you're a therapist, let me talk to you about my problems. But one of the things about narrative therapy and what kind of we position ourselves as, we believe, two things. One, we're not the expert. The client, patient, they are the expert of their life. I'm not there to tell them what to do. So I truly believe that they are able to cultivate all their own answers. And two, we do look at problems, but we also want to look at what's working and what are solutions. And I know that for me, and if I'm just using my own story as far as, I grew up Catholic in Oklahoma, southern Oklahoma. I luckily had a very supportive family, but our mom and dad, at least, that told me they loved me and things like that. But again, nobody kind of understood nobody understood this little 2-year-old boy with a lisp who was obsessed with Wonder Woman and was very feminine. So Linda Carter was my girl. I still love her to this day. But
she's a great girl.
She's a great girl. When I looked back at a lot of times working with a lot of gay male clients and lesbian clients, a lot of times there's this kind of there can be what's called an internalized homophobia, or like this internal hatred of being gay, and a lot of people, could speak about that. And I thought, that just didn't make sense to me. And so as a narrative therapist, I started to go back and look. We want to look at when were things working well. So it's not just the problems, but we want to kind of dissect your solutions. We want to look at the things that are great in your life, because when you dissect the strengths, then you know how to combat the problem story, because you have the strength story. And so for me, I really looked back and I thought, I remember being like 4 or 5 years old and knowing, not necessarily that I was like sexually attracted to men, but I remember like watching guys on TV and thinking he was handsome, and like I would think, I'd watch The Little Mermaid and I thought Prince Eric was way more dreamy than The Little Mermaid, and I knew that at a very young age. And I thought nothing was wrong with that, because it was just my natural instinct. So I would say for women, think about when you're in your story of sexuality, when was the first time you remember feeling either joy or feeling excitement or feeling self-love through your own sexuality? And because sometimes when we think about when was that first moment of that awakening in you, or you realizing it and feeling happy about it, then often that's when you can also trace when problem stories started kind of trying to hijack your own story.
So first go to the positive story when things were working, and so remembering that first sexual awakening and that feeling and feeling good about it, and then to go to when did something feel off or wrong or bad? Is that the next step?
Yeah, it can be, because I think people will find I'm a big fan of journaling. I'm a big fan of doing it with my classes and with I'm a lot of, again, in narrative we do doing some writing exercises. But what I've found is when people realize, and sex, I think almost more than anything, but especially a lot for women, some women are their story has been hijacked so much about sexuality being having a negative connotation that they can't. that they're almost they're conditioned to always. It's like classical conditioning, like Pavlov and the dogs. The Pavlov rang the bell and the dogs became hungry, and that's what he studied. But it's almost like women hear the word sexuality or sex, and they immediately start to feel bad about it, or they start to feel like they can't talk about it, or they start to feel like it's a dirty subject. And so it's looking at, but we're not programmed that way. And so when people can go back, and whether it's through journaling or just really thinking about when was the first time I experienced joy as a sexual self and passion, and whether it's for themselves or in a relationship, often they'll find, oh, my instinct wasn't to think negative about this. My instinct is that this is a good thing. And so when you realize that, it's empowering. And so I think when you have that empowerment, then we can start to tease out different stories. So I know that, like, as a gay man, I've been in a relationship. I was single for about 15 years as an adult, and I'm 38, and I just have been in a relationship for about 2 years, so really my first one. But I remember kind of a narrative I take on is that gay men are promiscuous and they don't really settle down, and that you don't really step into loving relationships. And then but I thought about as myself when I was younger and kind of what I valued, and as a teenager what I valued and was looking for. Yes, I was interested in sex and things like that, but I was really interested in connection. As somebody who loves Oprah and loves, self-help and loves this type of conversation, I thought, what was wrong? And I realized that a lot of it for me was I'd really kind of believed everybody around me was in this kind of cycle of, being promiscuous, which is fine if that's what you want to be. But I realized for me, I wanted to be more connected in a relationship and build an emotional connection because I was really good at building the sexual one. So I don't know if that helps people. I can't. Again, I always feel like I have to use my own story, and hopefully some people see themselves in that because, again, as a man, I feel like I can relate to sexuality, not in the same way, but a similar way as a gay man that, like women, what I was instinctually interested in sex was shunned upon, and I was told that was wrong, and, looked down upon at a very young age. And it's interesting, most of my women clients, we relate a lot of that similar experience.
No, I think it's great to share your experience, and I appreciate it. And I do believe that people find themselves in our stories. I'm a huge believer in getting better at telling your stories because I think that it's important for people to hear them. We all learn from each other. I'm a member of Toastmasters, and I'm actually speaking tonight.
I love Toastmasters.
Do you? Oh, yay!
Oh, I love it.
So I was a horrible public speaker, and I was really hiding myself my whole life because I had a belief from my childhood that I was terrible at speaking and acting, and I was an artist, and I was quiet, and I did quiet things, and so when we'd have plays, I was overlooked for any of the big parts because I had a quiet voice. And I realized a few years ago that if I was going to be successful in my life, and especially in my career, that I had to learn to overcome both my old story plus my fear. And for me, the why became bigger than the fear. My message, my passion. And so we need to share our stories. Years ago, I could never have done a podcast, and I could never have gotten on a stage and delivered a TED Talk like I did 4 years ago. So that's coming from the world-class terrible speaker. So we can keep ourselves really small. And so I love that you found your truth and that connection was really important to you, and you went after it and found the relationship that you wanted. Because we can easily fall into what we think society wants of us or what we think even our partner wants from us when it's not what we really want. So let's go to a real-life situation in dating, and this comes up a lot where people are paced differently. And in heterosexual relationships, I'm not sure if this is true in gay relationships as well, but I have a feeling that there's always more of a dominant or somebody with masculine energy and somebody with feminine energy in any relationship. And so I would imagine that in any relationship there's usually somebody who wants to be sexual before the other one is ready. And so how do you suggest that the person who wants the other person to slow down have that conversation?
You know, I think, and I think that's a great scenario, and because it happens a lot, and as again, just being the typical gay best friend to a lot of straight women, I hear it a lot. But you know, but it's not. But I don't want to just say it's not necessarily women that are wanting to hold off on the sexualness, because I have had a couple of conversations with my girlfriends where they're like ready to get and do it, and that their boyfriend is like a little more timid. So
yeah, it can work both ways.
Just want to put that up there.
My last relationship was like that, actually.
Good for you. So I definitely think one thing is, you know, I always have these conversations. So when you are having a conversation that is potentially could be, I don't know why I use this word, but I do. When it potentially can be a little radioactive, and you feel like it could, you know, be problematic. I often talk about. I do this with clients when I have to speak with them about something that's uncomfortable. I do it with my boyfriend. I try to do it with my family. I've done a lot with people I disagree with lately about politics. But kind of going into the conversation, I say, this is my intention. When I'm talking to you right now, this is my intention for this conversation. So if you started out this conversation with someone said, okay, I want to talk to you a little bit about our sex life, and this is my intention in this conversation. What I hope comes from this conversation is I want to feel more connected to you. I want to feel more understood by you. I want to understand you better. I want to feel closer to you, and I want us to experience more feeling of love between each other after we have this conversation. So already, now we're setting up what we want the conversation to be. Instead of just jumping in and saying, so I don't want to have sex right now. Because if you start off with that, then many people are going to get defensive, because they're going to be like, they think I'm ugly, they think I'm fat, they think I'm gross, they don't love me. I mean, I would too. But if you start this conversation with, I do love you, I do care about you, I want to be close with you, and I want to hold off on having sex right now, then they're still going to be listening. But when you say, because I want to, you know, whatever your reasons are for that, whether it's your own reasons or whether I'm thinking actually of I won't say names, because first of all I was thinking of, you know, one of my good friends was in a relationship where a woman wanted to hold off dating, and I kept saying to him all the time, I'm like, dude, it's not you. It's not you. I'm telling you, it's not you. Just have a conversation. And we finally talked to her about it, and she talked about sexual abuse that she has experienced and how she still is triggered by that. And then they ended up, they're married now. They had this great conversation about that. So I think it's always an opportunity to, you know, and so if you're listening to this and if you're in a relationship with a guy who is telling you, I want to wait to have sex, or, you know, something like that, don't assume it's about you. Always inquire of what's going on with them.
That's great advice. I mean, I totally agree with you on this, that the intention for any tough conversation is essential. And because, you know, in my past, the conversations were all about, let me get this off my chest and dump it on you. That doesn't work really well. And, you know, if you really are having this conversation because you care about somebody, you got to let them know. And it's so essential. I mean, you know, the other day my son lives with me. He's 25, and he and I have very intense conversations. And I'm able to say to him, you know what, when you just made fun of the way I sang, because he did that the other day, I said that really felt bad. And he said, my intention was not to hurt you. And I said, I know that, but I'm telling you that, you know, I was made fun of a lot for different things, especially in my marriage. And so these are trigger points for me. So if you can please not do that, I would really appreciate it. So, you know, we were able to talk it through at first, you know. So great practice. We all have opportunities to practice these conversations with the people in our lives every single day.
Yep.
And not to just be quiet and stuff your emotions when you have something important to say. And look at the example you shared where they're married today. I mean, that could have easily ended because of assumptions that weren't true.
Exactly. 100 million% agree.
Yeah. Oh boy, it's 25 after already. How did that happen?
Oh, wow.
You were fun to talk to, Matt.
Oh, thank you. You too.
Thanks
very much. Yeah, we were going. I didn't realize.
Yeah, so let's get some nuggets to end the show with. Just some really important things that you want to share with our audience about sexuality and the importance of having these discussions. Anything that you can share with us?
Again, I swear you didn't pay me to come on and just talk about all the awesome things you're doing. In listening to him, and I listened to an episode a little bit just to prepare and coming to this. I love individual therapy. I think it's great for people to have it, and it's a great resource. But I have to say that through my own practice, personal and also professional, I'm really a big fan of group therapy and kind of immersing yourself in a supportive environment. So first of all, I want to tell people, if you've been on the fence about this, please join this Facebook Live group, the private group, because when you told me about that, that is such a fantastic community. And I feel like I don't believe in this. I don't believe in the whole thing that we're in an individualistic society and that we all do things on our own. I think that's BS. I think that anybody, whether they admit it or not, had a support group or at least one person that kind of really catapulted their life and enabled them to be happy or successful or whatever that word is for them. So I think my big nugget is get support. Find people that you can talk about your sexuality with, whether you're coming out as queer or lesbian or gender fluid or trans or whatever, or if you just want to talk about just simple sexuality stuff, like just about what masturbation, or if there was a lot of women talk about. I have my own podcast. Ironically enough, I didn't plan it this way, but that I'm airing this week. I talk with a sex expert, Dr. Jen Gonzalez, and we're talking a lot about she did a documentary about masturbation, how a lot of women didn't even really know how to masturbate, and being able to talk about those kind of things, and not just in yourself and not just read it on a book, but be able to talk about it with other women that are supporting you, that is huge. And be able to do that, to talk about your own sexuality with the group, is going to enable you to talk about your sexuality with a partner. We were talking before the show started that one thing that I do think is great for a place for therapy is that often it's the first time, sometimes I've experienced it, where couples have told their partner in front of their therapist sexually what they want out of a relationship, because they need a safe place to feel that they can do it. And that might not be because they don't feel safe with their partner. It might be their back history of, maybe they were shunned by their parents or whoever raised them, or their wherever, that you don't ever talk about this. So they needed to kind of have this person saying, okay. But that's my big nugget in this, is find support, whether through a Facebook Live group, whether through a women's group or a therapist, or find some support where you can explore these things and feel safe and validated.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the shout-out, too, and I couldn't agree with you more about support and community. I think people who have community feel less alone. It normalizes the kinds of thoughts that you have. I mean, this is what I see over and over again. I thought I was alone, and now I can see other people are sharing in this experience. And in terms of masturbation, I mean, I have had clients come to me in their 60s who are just learning now that masturbation exists, and how amazing it is to learn your body. And oh my God, so important.
Or don't buy a dildo or a toy. They feel so much angst or shame about that, and so it's maybe 2, because I'm not lazy, but I like to work smartly. And if I'm in a client with an individual session, it literally takes me months of getting them to this place of feeling normalized, like you were saying. Whereas in group therapy, that can be fixed in 5 minutes as soon as they share their story and one person in the group says, oh, man, I totally relate to that because I do this and this and this. Just the energy that I see, how quickly that shifts for them, it's huge.
I'll share one quick little story about something like that. I used to run these art workshops because I'm an artist and I wanted to combine my coaching and my art. And so there were these painting workshops where people would come and we would do a guided meditation first to really get them centered and let go. And then I would give them giant pieces of paper and tempera paints in like 12 different colors and all sizes of brushes and sponges and just release them with the paint and just play, just have fun and let go. And what came of it was people would discover, like you were saying before, you're not the person who knows the client's story as well as the client. And the client and the person in the workshop would discover their own process, their own what was really going on deep inside by letting go. And they would put their paintings down on the floor when they were done. And at the end, I had everybody go over to the painting that spoke to them the most and just walk over, get pulled in, and talk about why you were drawn to the painting. And one time, the whole theme was orgasms, vibrators. It was just like people started having this conversation, and it was people of all ages just feeling comfortable to, oh my God, I have that vibrator too. It was like it was so
that's
great.
So normalizing.
So normalizing. This one woman who was in her late 60s and now maybe even 70s, she was just painting these big, giant, like blue colors. She said, this is like an orgasm. It was like, I loved it. People were discovering that they had to leave relationships and that they had to leave a job and, finding out their own truths. Really amazing stuff.
Art therapy that's a whole other thing. I did co-therapy once, and one of my traineeships was a woman who was an art therapist, and it's amazing. That's all I'm gonna. That's a whole other show.
Yeah. I was an art therapy major in college for a while, and then I ended up becoming a fine arts major because I didn't like the way art therapy was taught at the time. But I'm a big believer in self-expression in whatever way you can find to let it flow. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. And people can find you at the Dear Maddie Show.
At Dear Maddie, Dear Maddie Show, and it's MATTIE. So DearMaddieShow.com, or social media is the Matt Marr, MATTMARR. Whether it's Twitter, Instagram, they can find me on those things.
Well, thank you so much, Matt, for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much, Sandy. I loved it. Loved it.
Yeah, me too. Thanks, everybody, for listening today, and I hope you go on your last first date very soon. Have a great day.